Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000. They were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please.
Senator John Kennedy just grilled FBI Director Kash Patel on everything from Wisconsin judge arrests to Jeffrey Epstein's death, delivering his trademark Louisiana straight talk in a Senate Appropriations hearing. From $2 million FBI settlements to Hunter Biden's laptop, Kennedy didn't hold back on the tough questions. Stick around because this exchange reveals major accountability issues at the FBI and some surprising answers from the new director. Let's get into it.
This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI, Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, to-be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts, had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said, oh, no, the story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah. The FBI had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth?
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we are on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The hearing took place as part of President Trump's 2026 budget request for the FBI, which would cut more than $500 million annually from the Bureau's budget. Senator Kennedy used this opportunity to address several controversial issues beyond just funding. Kennedy opened by discussing a Wisconsin judge who was arrested by the FBI for helping an illegal immigrant escape federal custody. Patel confirmed the arrest was made because she violated federal law. Kennedy used this to establish the principle that no one gets to pick and choose which laws to follow, including state court judges who must comply with federal law. The conversation then turned to the Lisa Page and Page-Strzok case. Kennedy referenced the Inspector General's findings that both FBI employees harbored strong anti-Trump sentiments and wanted Hillary Clinton to win the 2016 election. Kennedy specifically quoted the text message exchange where Page asked if Trump would become president, and Strzok replied, "No, he won't, we'll stop it." Kennedy then revealed that the FBI paid Strzok $1.2 million and Page $800,000 to settle their wrongful termination lawsuits. When asked who made this decision, Patel stated it was made during the prior administration by then Attorney General Merrick Garland. Kennedy expressed clear disapproval of these settlements, given that both employees were fired for actively interfering in the 2016 election. The Hunter Biden laptop issue came up next. Kennedy noted that in October 2020, shortly before the election, the New York Post published stories about Hunter Biden's influence peddling based on his laptop. He referenced how 51 intelligence experts, organized by Anthony Blinken, dismissed this as Russian disinformation. Kennedy pointed out that the FBI had possessed the laptop for 10 months before the election and knew it wasn't Russian disinformation. He asked Patel to identify who at the FBI prevented the Bureau from telling the American people the truth. Patel didn't have the name immediately available, but agreed to provide it. Kennedy then shifted to Jeffrey Epstein's death, asking Patel directly whether Epstein hung himself or was killed. Patel stated his belief that Epstein hung himself in his cell at the Metropolitan Detention Center. When Kennedy asked about releasing all information related to the case, Patel said they are working with the Department of Justice to do so while protecting victims and avoiding release of irrelevant information. Kennedy pressed for a timeline on the Epstein information release, asking somewhat sarcastically if it would be completed before I die. Patel indicated it would be done in the near future, but didn't provide a specific date. Throughout the questioning, Kennedy maintained his characteristic direct style, at one point asking for the sick bucket please after learning about the Strzok and Page settlements. His approach was to establish clear principles about equal treatment under the law while demanding specific accountability for past FBI actions. Patel's responses were generally straightforward, acknowledging the facts Kennedy presented while indicating where decisions were made by previous administrations rather than under his leadership. Kennedy's demand for specific names rather than divisions shows his focus on individual accountability within federal agencies. What's your take on these FBI accountability questions and the timeline for releasing information? Subscribe for continued analysis of congressional oversight hearings and federal agency accountability.